Hey, welcome, folks, to Craig Bouchon Show. Great day today. We're going to jump right into it because I'm going to tell you something. Today is one of the greatest shows that I think that we have put together. And when you see and hear who's on the show today, it's going to be amazing. Because look, folks, it's about education. It's about letting you know what's going on in your children's lives and also what's going on in the world. So stay tuned. We're going to be right back, and you don't miss this show. Welcome back, folks. Craig Bouchon here, CraigBouchonShow.com. Also go to AmericaICan.com. There's actually a link right in the front of my website. A lot of great information there. We have great writers, great content, a lot of fresh perspectives. So excited to have you with us today. I have to jump right into it. Eric, producer extraordinaire, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. First time we've had 3 guests on in an hour, so let the fun begin.
That's exactly right. Because, folks, as I promised you, when I came back on air after many years off, I was drugged back in because I was really concerned that you weren't getting the right information. You weren't getting the data that you needed to make an intelligent decision so you could have a better life, so this country could be a better country. And it's all about what we ingest, folks, what we're fed, right? Not just food quality, also educational quality. So today is a big focus on education. I'm excited about that. Eric, tell the folks who we have on today, because I'm really excited about it.
Well, we're going to bring on Kathy Kolb. She is with the Educational Advisory Board for the 917 Society, which I know you're a big supporter of, and Corinthia Elder. She's on the advisory board also. So we'll bring them both on now. Welcome to the program, ladies.
Very good. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited about having you.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yes. Well, I don't know where we start first. So whoever wants, Corinthia, Kathy, it doesn't matter to me. But today's focus, I'm really excited about talking about the state of education, the state of what children are learning today, and how what needs to change, and what 917 Society is doing to help in that. So whoever wants to go first, Corinthia or Kathy, go right ahead.
Okay, well, I'll start because, I can talk the longest, and I'm older than she is, so I know probably. As a 43 years plus educator, several years ago, I just realized that our students coming through the elementary school where I worked knew nothing about history. And I kept wondering, why don't you know this? Because we're supposed to be teaching it. But I find as a special education teacher, the more I go into classrooms and inclusion classrooms and push in, the less these teachers know about history. They have the books in front of them, but being as old as I am, there's so much history that I learned that is no longer in the history books that are taught. And there's very few textbooks that are used these days. It's all online. And I keep saying, just because it's online doesn't mean it's the truth. So I started teaching my special ed students how to read by using nonfiction historical stories. Mm-hmm. And they are so excited about it. And it's like, history isn't boring, as so many of them tell me. It's what you make of it, and it's how you teach it. So I've really enjoyed the last few years getting involved with 917, because once we start teaching that Constitution in 4th grade, those kids get excited about it. They want to know more about those historical figures that they don't seem to teach about anymore, like the spy from the American Revolutionary War, the African-American spy. They had no idea about that. And once you teach that, then they catch fire and they want to know more.
That's right. And you said something in your statement that really stood out to me, that everything's being digitized today. And the difference to me when you digitize something versus have the text to open it up, the revisionist can just invent new history and kind of push aside the facts. And they just rewrite history. And if you don't go back to the original text, then you really don't have a reference base that to know whether you're being duped or not duped.
That's correct. That
Absolutely.
is correct. I'm fine. Corinthia, I'm talking too much. Go ahead.
No. I enjoyed what you have just said. I'm excited about the movement that we have with 917 Society. I have been to a few schools in our area and just excited about telling the kids, you know, what 917 is. And a lot of them do not know that September 17th is Constitution Day. So it has just been an exciting journey for me. You know, I am a naturalized citizen and I'm so proud to be an American. And I just want everyone to know about the great country that we live in and make sure our youth understand their rights and the
Absolutely.
supreme law of the land.
And I suspect these children's parents don't know either. I think a lot of the parents are unaware. And years ago, I was unaware. As much as I'm involved in the message to citizens about how great this country is, you know, not many people even understood that 917 is Constitution Day. So just the parents are learning really along with the children because we got to, you know, the rising tide, raises all boats.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I start my citizenship test, I'll get that out. You know, I needed to study for the test, and I asked some of my friends some questions that I thought that they would know, and they did not. So we learned together, and you know, these are folks from that were born in the U.S., but they did not know the answer. So we got to learn and study together. And, it was just an eye opening experience for me. So when I heard about 917 and got involved, I was so excited to know that I have a little part that I can play in making sure that folks know what their rights are, what a constitution, the supreme law of the land says, and that they can make informed decisions that affect their lives and others.
Absolutely. And I think COVID did a lot to open up people's eyes to what their children were being taught and not taught. You know, Kathy, talk a little bit about that. You know, what's really changed, prior to COVID into where we're at now? Because it seems like we're in the middle of this paradigm shift, good and bad. You can see what the revisionists have been doing for quite some time and the indoctrination of education, not I think purposely not teaching children what they need to know. And now some of those children are adults and then they don't know. So now we're having to go back and start, teaching the basics. But I see a lot of changes just since COVID.
Well, and that was definitely, there's so many downsides to COVID, but the upside of that was parents did finally realize what their children were learning, because as they watched on the Zoom meetings with them at home, they were being introduced to information and literature and math, and these parents had no idea what their children were learning because they just trusted the school to teach what was supposed to be taught. And then they were given these math assignments that they had no idea how to do, even the parents. So I think that was as you say, a very, very big eye opener to parents to now get involved. And then you start seeing the domino effect of parents all across the nation going to school board meetings finally and speaking
Yes.
out because they trusted all this time what their school districts were doing for their children.
A-
So it was a
Absolutely.
very big eye opener. Yeah.
In Corinthia, you said something that is so important that as a naturalized citizen and a person that had to study the history of this country, study what it is to be an American, what America is, take an oath to the country. That's why we do America, ican.com and American, our movement that just syncs up so good with Joni Bryan, the founder of 917 Society. There's a great synergy there because Corinthia, a lot of Americans, most Americans were just born in this country, and they've really not had to do anything to back up what it is to be a citizen. And people have to get engaged. There's a job, there's a responsibility to being an American in the protection of the Republic.
Yes, absolutely. Um, like I said, it was certainly an eye-opening experience because I thought everyone knew these answers, basic answers that I thought that I could ask and I would get the answer, but I was pleasantly surprised. And like I said, that is one of the reasons I got on this journey, to make sure that folks are educated about what is in our Constitution, and they can better their lives and know how to respond to certain questions that is asked and know what their rights are when it's being challenged.
That's
So,
exactly right. And we saw a lot of constitutional rights be trampled on during COVID. Again, COVID was this huge trigger point, if you will. Kathy, it's if people don't know what the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution is, how do they know if it's being trampled on? And they don't even know that they have it. And there's way too many people in this society that don't know. They don't know the first five versus all 27.
Well, and then something else that just totally blew me away. This was a couple of years ago. I went into one of these fourth grade classrooms where they were supposed to be teaching the Constitution. And the teacher kept saying, "We're a democracy. We're a democracy." And finally, I thought, okay, you're a second year teacher. I'm just going to throw my 40 years experience at you and say, stop right there. I said, can I explain the difference between a democracy and a republic? We are a constitutional republic. And here's the difference. So I would walk over to one student's desk and say, now, if this was a democracy, I would just take all your stuff and steal it and say, you can't have it back. But in a constitutional republic, we have laws in place that protect all the citizens. And the teacher was just standing there looking at me like, what? What's the difference? And I said, here's the difference in this country and our country, because our Constitution has survived, whereas all the other countries, their constitutions have not. And the problem with this generation, the one before it, is they've never gone through or experienced the fear of what happened during World War II, the Cold War, and all of that. We have in this generation. So we know how precious freedom and liberty is.
absolutely.
But as you say, this group of students and generations do not. And that's why they have to know why the Constitution is so important. Because every time I start out trying to teach something to my students about the Constitution, I'll say, now, who's in control of your life? And they say, we. I said, who are we the people? We are. And so these little special ed students, they just get so fired up about that
Good.
because they feel like, I have a part of this. I have a part of this. I said, you need to know that so that when you go out into the world, you have the Constitution to back you up. And these politicians, you don't work for them. They work for you.
That's exactly right. On this show, and since day one of coming back on the air after a many-year hiatus, because of what you're talking about, not enough people spreading the truth. The motto of the show is "The truth is not hate speech." And this democratically elected representative republic, right? It's to the republic for which we stand. And it is not to the democracy in which we stand. Because democracy, a lot of people don't realize, democracy ends up at mob rule. It ends up in tyrannical movements. It ends up in that the mob can get together and shout you down and yell you down. There's no protectionisms with the law of the land. And so many people, it's such a valid point. Even people, what I would say on our side, say democracy. And that is just an absolute slap in the face to what our founders really gave us purposely to protect ourselves, along with the separation of powers. Why they're separated is another layer of defense that allows, as I really think, and you can give me your opinion on this, ladies, that I really believe that our founders knew this day would come, that people would get lazy, they get lackadaisic. Benjamin Franklin, quoted to say, "We have given you a republic if you can keep it." He could have said anything in the world, but he said that's one of the things that he did say. And that's why all these fail-safes are there to help us catch up and wake up, because unfortunately, societies can get lazy.
Absolutely.
I'm amazed at how they wrote this document. And as you say, it was almost as if they could foresee, and probably pulling from the experience of living under British rule, what would happen eventually if we did not put these fail-safes into place.
Yes.
That's
And they
exactly right.
supported it, yes, and gave their lives for it, and they stood behind it. And I am so glad that they did, because that's what that document separates us from many countries, and that is what makes America great. That Constitution that
Well,
they work so hard to provide to us.
Corinthia, we find that the people who tend to love this country the most out loud are people like yourself. people who
Thank you.
know what the world is like out there. They know how debilitating other societies are on their people. And when you come here, there's this validation as you as an individual, you with your free will, you with your protection through the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And so I love hearing people like yourself talk about it, because the average American needs a wake-up call. They need to understand that they were just born into this. They didn't have to go through the things that you did to get here. And God bless you for standing up and standing out and getting involved with 917 Society. So, okay. So, Kathy, where's 917 Society right now? How can the folks help? Where should they go? How do they get engaged? How do they, if a teacher's listening right now and says, hey, I want to do that in my school, or it's a principal or whatever. So what do people do?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. You go to 917society.org, and there are places on there where parents can get engaged. Anyone can get engaged. We have a map of the United States on our website, and it shows every state. It shows which states have already been covered as far as to how many eighth graders will be getting a pocket constitution. There are some states already fully donated, and it also shows you how many students are in that state and how much money it would cost to fund enough constitutions to send to that state. We have AMVETs working with us. I think North Dakota has already covered all the AMVETs in North Dakota, have fully funded constitutions. Tennessee is almost funded. There are several states that have already been fully funded. So they can donate money in honor of a family member or one of their children. There's just lots of ways to get involved by donating to those states, and we want to put a pocket constitution into the hands of every eighth grader across the state.
Yes, and you can certainly volunteer as well.
And that's a big deal, folks. Volunteering for organizations like 917 Society is paramount. These are not wealthy organizations. These are organizations that are passing through all of their money to get to the kids, to get to society, to help our society's IQ get raised. Ladies, I've always said that, many Americans are still in their infancy stage when it comes to the Republic, when it comes to understand what it is to be an American. And what our responsibility is. And every single day when those constitutions go out, folks, it's helping raise the IQ of the most important people in this country. And that is the future of this country. It's the children, but they're also the ones that are being attacked by the opposite side. The people who don't want you to have the liberty and the freedom and the expansion, the power of what it is to be an American citizen and all of our constitutional protections. So the folks they can donate, they can volunteer. The pocket constitutions are paramount to get out to the folks. And how much time do we have left, Eric?
We got about 12 minutes.
Perfect. Love it. So let's talk about what the challenges are. What's the pushback you get? Why wouldn't all school districts want to get involved? When they say no, what do they say to you?
Well, as far as the school district getting involved, it's a time-consuming effort. We have a management team, not a management team, but they are fully focused on trying to get email addresses to contact all the school districts across the state. And that is a huge amount of time. And it's just a matter of fact of sending emails to all the directors or superintendents of all the schools. And a lot of times, these directors and superintendents are so busy, they'll see an email and they won't recognize who it's from, and they'll just say, oh, I'll read that later. So unless you can really get into them that way, you have to make one-on-one personal visits, and that's so time-consuming. So that's one of the more difficult things. Not that they ever say no, it's just the fact of actually getting in to talk to them or getting the information.
Yes. And it's just contact, finding the right person so that you can get access to the facilities and to the schools. And once you're there, most of the schools have been welcoming. It's just getting to that first part where you can reach that person that will allow for that to happen. And it's been well received when we have gone to all the schools.
Okay. So, folks, you go to 917society.org. You go look at the map. Obviously, watch the videos on there. They're very interesting. There's a message from Joni Bryan as well and others. And I suspect, if I hear this correctly, citizens in their communities can help their school districts as well by going to the schools and saying, hey, we'd like to have this in the schools. How can we help? Letting the school districts know that their community's behind them as well, kind of that grassroots message going right to the schools, go to their legislators as well. Because I think legislatively it's a big deal because there's several politicians. I know you're based right out of Tennessee, but there's a lot of politicians involved as well. It's a political situation also, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Kentucky, originally from Kentucky. I have a friend who's in the House of Representatives there, and he has helped us get into Kentucky there. And just more or less having parents ask for, I put a basket of constitutions in the front lobby of our school, in the front office. And what was mind boggling was a parent came in, picked it up and looked at it and threw it back in the basket and said, this is just propaganda. So not only do we have to reach the students, we have to reach the parents as well.
Absolutely.
On the flip side of that, one of my students, I give out the constitutions every year, and he took his home and then he came back and said, may I have another one? And I said, I just gave you one. He said, well, my mama wants one because she needs to read it too. So there's good things, advantages and disadvantages to having them for school.
Yeah.
Well, that goes right back that what you just said about the person, the parent picking it up and putting it back down and calling it propaganda. That goes right to the heart of the point, Corinthia, about what you're talking about. That is an uneducated person that obviously learned somewhere, somebody taught that person to think that way, to feel that way. And that's a problem because that's the gatekeeper for the child that they have. So it's so important that we get the message to the adults. And that could be a challenge because obviously that's a pretty strong feeling when you throw it down and you say, that's just propaganda. And here you are as a representative coming from another part of the world saying it is not propaganda at all. It is the thing that will free your life.
Yes, absolutely. So education is key. I have just found in my walk of life, if you're educated about a matter, then you can make better decisions. You're informed, and you know how to defend yourself. So we, as Kathy said, we will target both parents and students and give them the document that that will be enlightening to them if they don't know all the details that are in there. But truly, the Constitution is what sets America apart from the world.
Yes, absolutely. And we're sitting in a space right now. I mean, every single day on this show, that we talk about, what it is to be an American and what you see going on around the world as well. And you can see in other societies, if you really can look and see the honest truth, the truth about what's going on around the world, you can see what's happening in Europe and in China and in Russia and Ukraine and all these other parts of the world who do not have a constitution like we do. There's other countries that have constitutions that have failed, and but they don't have a Bill of Rights like we do. They don't have a separation of powers like we do. They don't have the structure that we have. There's a lot of constitutions around the world, but ours is different, Kathy. And isn't that the real the difference when we say even constitution? Not all constitutions are the same.
Definitely, because when we teach the Constitution, these students need to know that not all of the participants, and when they met to write the Constitution, were happy with it in the beginning, because when they tried to get everyone to agree and sign it and get on board, there was not a Bill of Rights to it. And George Mason, one of the attendees, said, I am not signing this until you put in a Bill of Rights, because we have to make sure that our citizens are protected and taken care of.
Absolutely.
And some went home. They refused to sign it.
Yeah, that centralized power, which even was in the Federalist Papers, if I remember right, there was too much power at the top, and we needed. I always say this. I try to keep it simple. I really do. That here is what the pyramid is, right? That the power at the top, even the Federalist Papers had too much power. Dictatorships, China, the CCP, a lot of power at the top. Our founders want to flip that upside down and put the power with the people, and then the weakest actually being the federal government, with the states being in between. So it's a flip, it's an inversion of what other societies still are today and had been in the past. So the we, the people, being the three largest words on the page, is a huge message to when those three words no longer care or understand the words following it, the republic will be lost.
That's right.
That's just the way I look at it.
What's really important, even more important, is that both Corinthia and I are military spouses. Mine's retired and hers is almost retired. But we were in Europe for several years, and while my husband was deployed, I went to Russia. I went to Czechoslovakia before it split. I was there before the Berlin Wall came down. I went to all those communist countries, and that's experience I can bring back and tell my students. I watch people stand in line for a loaf of bread. That is something that just can't fathom, because food is just readily available everywhere you go.
Yes.
So we just have to see how important their freedoms are, because they just don't realize how important they really are.
Absolutely.
And I
sure.
think a lot of folks take it for granted, the freedom that we enjoy. But when you are in a different country, things are a little bit different.
That's
And
exactly right.
they're not aware of how life is outside of the U.S. And I'm just hoping that we continue this movement to educate them and to help them realize, those who don't, what a great country we live in. And there's been so much sacrifice and continue to be because we are America, and the land that we love, and it's the home of the brave, of the free, because of the brave.
That's exactly right. That message needs to be consistently reiterated all the time to remind folks that the freedoms that we have came at a very, very high cost, and to not pay attention to all of the rights that we have and the laws that are there to protect us it is very, very harmful to the future of this country and to the future for not just us here, our kids, grandkids, and the people we'll never meet. Because if the Constitution is allowed to be circumvented and people start losing their rights, that's the end of the republic. So that's why I was so excited to have you on today, and we're going to keep having people on from 917 Society, folks, because it is an absolute. It's a mandatory effort. It's a mandatory effort that our children learn what it is to be an American and be proud of it. Understand that that we are a beacon of light and hope for the world. We cannot allow revisionists and to twist and manipulate the past, okay, to try to construct this new utopian future. There is no utopian future. It's going to be hard fought. Every day we have to defend our liberty. And just like Kathy and Corinthia are there with 917 Society doing it, we're glad and happy to be behind you all. And we're going to put some posts out there. We're going to, again, tell the folks again where they need to go if they want to get behind what your movement.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate you having us on.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. God bless, folks. Go to 917society.org.
Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, that's what it's about getting engaged. All right? Just regular folks. You and I, we the people. More when we come back, folks. The rest of this show, we're going to keep moving forward on the education. We're going to keep getting our IQ higher, okay? And it is so important. So next on the show, we're going to have Daniel Hood. He comes out of the United Kingdom, and this person is going to probably scare you a little bit because he is an expert in the rise and fall of civilizations. And there's some key things happening right now that are quite alarming that we have to be mindful of. So we'll be back, folks.
If you study history, in particular, just most recently, you look at what happened in Russia, the Russian Revolution, right? Alexander Solzhenitsyn teaches us, and history teaches us, the issue of the day was getting rid of God first in order for communism to take over. You go forward a few years later in history with Adolf Hitler. What was the first thing the Third Reich was doing? Was silencing and getting rid of the church, God, if you will. And now what we're seeing in the United States of America is the exact same thing.
Amen.
Let's get rid of God, because if you can get rid of God, if you can silence and weaken the church, then all of a sudden the satanic plan for globalism to happen around the world has a much better chance.
Sure.
The hope of America is churches filled with people that love Jesus and are being instructed by on-fire pastors.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took MyPillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented MyPillow to bring you the best pillow in history, MyPillow 2.0. Because of all of you, MyPillow 2.0 has been a huge success, and now we're bringing you our best-selling Go Anywhere MyPillows with the same temperature-regulating technology. Made with my patented adjustable fill and brand new cooling fabric, they're truly the next generation of MyPillow. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save over 60% on our MyPillow 2.0 4-pack special. You'll get 2 MyPillows and 2 Go Anywhere MyPillows. Regular $259.92, now only $99.98. King size just $10 more. This is a limited time offer, so please order now.
Welcome back, folks, to Craig Bouchon Show. What a great beginning of the show with the 917 Society teaching us, about, well, the fundamentally most important thing to be an American is you have constitutional rights. You have 27 amendments to the Constitution. And in a few minutes, we're going to have Daniel Hood on, and it's going to be riveting, and I'm excited about it. And but really quick, Eric, what'd you think? 917 Society, having the ladies on there. They're working hard, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's why when we put the show together this way, we're speaking to people. We have Daniel from the UK coming on. He's going to explain to us what's happened in the past, and we don't want to repeat it. But these ladies are fighting to make sure that doesn't happen in our country by getting the foundational document into the hands of the youth, the Constitution.
That's right. The one thing I've always said, and I look forward to getting Daniel's opinion on it, but I said is that what separates us from the rest of the world is how the structure of the United States of America was put together, and having the separation of powers, not only having a constitution, which many countries have, but also having specific Bill of Rights and a system designed to have many layers of defense. So hopefully tyrannical people in very, very bad situations don't keep growing to the point that it metastasizes and destroys the republic. So it was a great thing, folks. If you missed it, just go back. We'll have it up on craigbouchon.com, and you could see the beginning of the show. Great message. Get behind the ladies at 917society.org. So let's get right into it. Eric, Daniel Hood, I'll tell you something. It's exciting. There he is right there from the UK. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, Eric, great to be with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It is, you may have heard leading into this segment that we just had ladies on from an organization in the US called 917society.org, and they specifically get pocket constitutions into children's hands in the school system to help teach this next generation coming up what it is to be an American, what it is to have your constitutional rights. And so they know if you know what your Fourth Amendment to the Constitution is, then you know if it's being trampled on. And we've had way too many people not have that wisdom. And so there's a lot of bad things happening in the U.S., let alone the rest of the world. So I'm excited about having you on today. And just give a quick I'll say this. Folks, I wanted him on because I followed some of his writings. It's very interesting to me. He comes from the studying of the rise and fall of civilizations, the collapse of civilizations. What do they have in common? And I'm very excited about having you on today. So where do you want to start? That's such a big subject. I don't know where we start. So you go ahead. I want to let you talk. Just tell the folks, I'm assuming they're starting at like an infancy stage of most people are in preschool. Heck, we just got to get them to kindergarten and first grade, let alone teach them at a PhD level. So go ahead.
Right. So, wow, it's a huge subject, and we're learning new stuff all the time. So I'm a lifelong student, I'm a passionate student of history, and Mark Twain was right. The history doesn't repeat, but there's a rhythm to it, right? And if we want to see, shine a light on the future, we just simply, look in the past, or the past is the future with the light shined on. So, it's born from a deep passion of just trying to figure things out, trying to uncover secrets. And, I'm interested in civilizational mechanics. This is a really sexy new word that's it doesn't even, if you actually search for that word on the internet, it doesn't exist, right? So we're literally creating a new academic discipline, which is really exciting to be at the beginning of something really interesting. Now, it's not to say, Eric, that other scholars, haven't covered this. You've got brilliant scholars, German intellectual Oswald Spengler. He didn't even have a PhD, so you don't need to be a scholar. I think you just need to have good senses, and then you can go back, way to the era of the Greeks with Thucydides, the history of the Peloponnesian War. You can look at Cynic scholars, you can look at Islamic scholars. And then more recent, you've got the Peter Turchins out there who, I always forget but he looks at the rise and fall of civilizations mathematically. And then more recently, there's a brilliant entrepreneur over in Australia, a good friend of mine called Dr. Jim Penman, who came up with a theory called biohistory, which really blew my mind. And I'm an ex-soldier, Eric. So I served out in Afghanistan. I served out in Iraq with U.S. Special Forces. So when you're a soldier and you've served your country and you've been the kind of sharp end of the spear, and especially with these conflict zones in Afghanistan and Iraq, which didn't turn out so well for us, you start to ask some really, really deep questions, right? And as you get a bit older, it's kind of less warrior, more scholar, right? So you hit the books, and it's interesting. I served with the armed forces. I was a young officer. And I served with the Parachute Regiment, which is a very famous regiment in the UK, formed at the behest of Sir Winston Churchill, right, in order to take on the Germans, so on and so forth. So it's a really prestigious regiment. It's probably a bit like the 82nd Airborne, right? So really, steeped in history and honor and so on and so forth. And after my time in the armed forces. And that was before, during, and after 9/11. So that was like the first warning shot across the bow of civilization, right? And then after my time in the armed forces, I joined. I worked in finance, right? So I worked in the City of London, and that was before, during, and after 2008 global financial crisis. That was the second warning shot across the bow of our civilization. And for me, that really got me down this whole history path where, I started to realize that, maybe things aren't linear, maybe things aren't exponential. What if things are cyclical, right? What if this idea that first of all, there are civilizations which the liberal world order doesn't even recognize, right?
That's right.
They don't respect their own civilization, recognize their own civilization, let alone anybody else's, right? So what if there are civilizations as, maybe the highest classification of societal structure, which is very Samuel Huntington, right? This idea that, yes, we have nations, we have communities, but at the highest kind of strategic level we've got, or societal classification, we have civilizations, rather than this idea of there being this one world order, or one world government, or kind of a global
Absolutely right. That's exactly why when people they said, Craig, what are you doing? Why are you going back? I was on air many years ago, and then I took a hiatus, And Eric, my show producer, he's a Marine, right? Once a Marine, always a Marine. We've been heavily involved for years with the armed forces here in America within my program and my show in the past. And I saw happening exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, I'm coming back because I want to bring a message to the people that is not getting to them consistently enough. The facts, the truth. It's data in, it's data out. If you don't have access to history, truthful history, and you don't have the facts of what's going on today, like I'd like to talk a little bit about what's going on in France, the churches burning down, all that kind of stuff. And I said, I'm going back on air, and because we've got to get people that know what's going on to talk to the folks so they know what's going on, because a lot of them are being deceived, and a lot of this is happening not only in the United States but across the world because of great deception.
There's no question about that. It's really important because I'm a big believer in what I call real America, right? So you talked about the Constitution. The equivalent to that in the UK. I mean, the UK has incredible history, right? We go back thousands and thousands of years. I mean, I'm living out in Lincolnshire, which is Hobbit country. Not far from here, the Vikings sailed up the Humber River, right? So Rome had been in Britain for 300-400 years, and then it was gone. This was a huge shock to Britain sub-Rome, right? We entered into a dark age for nearly 600 years. Okay, it took us that long to get out of it. And that was only because of Christianity, of the Bible. So we'll come on and talk about this kind of whole kind of link between cyclical history playing out. And I agree with you. In the UK, we have the Magna Carta, the Libertatum. That's what it was all about. Freedom, this notion of freedom, sovereignty. The king does not have a right to interfere. Every Englishman's home is his castle. Stay out of our lives, stay out of our business. We don't just serve you as subjects, you also serve us, the people, as well, right? So it's this kind of constant battle between power and authority. And you guys are the last bastion for freedom. If you fall,
hallelujah,
it is over. It is, and this is what I spend so much time trying to evangelize in America, right? And saying, listen, this is what's happening. You guys remind me, think of the modern West as paralleling the Roman Empire, right? Or Roman civilization, because we can see the same cyclical process playing out that we could see back then. Greece had its own distinct civilization. Rome has its own distinct civilization. Why is it that Rome elicits so much fascination? The Roman Republic, the Roman Empire, what happened to the Rome? How could this incredibly powerful, technologically superior, sophisticated civilization system vanish, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And we entered into a protracted dark age for hundreds of years. And what I tried to get across to a lot of listeners is, this notion of a dark age, it was such a cultural shock to the people of the ancient world, right? That we have no comprehension of what a dark age looked like. And my biggest fear, and this is perhaps why you're doing what you're doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing, why we're trying to create these frameworks and narratives to help people make better sense of things, is because I really, really feared this idea of a dark age, because it's going to be bad. And we can see what's happening in places like France, right, where churches are being burnt, where the barbarian hordes are now on the loose, and this kind of liberal government under Macron, these guys are losing control. The state is losing control. In America, we can see the disaster that is the Biden administration. I mean, even if you're not a Republican or you're not a small c conservative, I'm a believer in God. I believe in the Bible, Jerusalem. That's kind of where I roll and my DNA, right? But even if you're secular, I've got plenty of friends who are self-described atheists, and even they can see what a disaster this guy is for world order, right? So it's really amusing. You hear Joe Biden and these guys saying, yeah, we want to defend the liberal world order. Well, if this is your idea of defending the liberal world order, kind of this acceleration with the de-dollarization phenomenon, I would argue we're losing this strategic war. In fact, it's twofold. We're not only losing the territorial war with Russia, which I don't believe would have happened under Donald Trump.
You're 100% right.
I do not believe that this war would have happened had Donald Trump been in power, period. I don't care about his other temperamental flaws. And as far as I can see, he never started any wars.
That's 100% correct. And you said something a moment ago that is so powerful to, as this show grows. Obviously it's United States based, but now it's in the UK and it'll be in other places as well, as we all get together and speak about, the truth of what's going on, is that a lot of people complain that America doesn't need to be that big beacon out there. America doesn't have to have the strongest military. America doesn't have to be the world police. America doesn't have to worry about China. Well, it's the polar opposite. The United States of America is we're the last domino, if you will, that has to fall for CCP, communism. And that's the other problem too, is that people don't understand that communism is real, and it's reconstructed itself to navigate in through the modern times, and it's duping people to believe that it's not really that bad. No, it's even worse than what it was before.
I agree with that. It's what I agree with you. I'm of the old school kind of this notion that we should shine a mirror up to ourselves and be insanely critical. The moment that we start to blow smoke up our own, backsides is the moment we're done. So when you go online and you see a lot of what I write, I bash America, I bash Britain, I bash ourselves.
Good.
Because I want people to understand the notion of reality, right? That reality is absolute. There are some that argue metaphysically that God and reality are one and the same forces. Chris Langan, who in America, the guy with an IQ of 200, right? The rancher, the kind of, believer in God. And he writes CTMU, Cognitive Theoretical Model of the Universe, basically saying, listen, if you deviate against God, you're basically rallying and raging against reality itself. And there's nowhere better we can see this today than this whole kind of woke phenomenon. It's not even liberalism. Liberalism has kind of regressed, degraded into wokeism, and we're going to get steamrolled, right? And there was the U.S. Navy Secretary. I wrote about it a couple of days ago. He came out. He said, "Listen, guys, you all better get with reality, right? The Chinese, they have one shipyard that basically creams the entire building capacity of the US Navy, just one, right? So what did we do over the last 30, 40 years? In our Faustian pact with the devil for profit, we outsourced, and Britain did this too. So as far as I'm concerned, America, Britain, we're kind of one and the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
We completely imploded after World War II. And thank God we were able to hand over power to you guys. And it's really frustrating to see the same phenomenon unfolding with you guys than what happened with us, right? So we can see this whole, this strategic mess that we're in. So I agree with you. I am really critical, but it's not because, I want to see the decline of America and the West. I mean, think about it. We have been the dominant force of 400 years, the Anglo-Saxon world order for 200 years. The liberals inherited what we created, what Christendom created, what Western civilization created, and they've blown it after a generation. They've blown it, right? So
that's exactly right.
I believe, I'll tell you what I believe, and I hope that you have got listeners who are follow kind of listeners who are trying to latch on to something. In the same way we saw the rise of Christendom when Rome fell, I honestly believe we can shorten the length or short circuit a dark age through Christ, through the Bible, through God again, right? So it's really important that America becomes more Christian, not less Christian.
That's
right?
exactly right. It's the movement against, let's just say, the West, or against Christian ideology, against the theologian, against the people that believe that there's one God and that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and died on the cross for you and I and for all of us. So that that very thing is being called hate speech now by these people you're talking about, the woke. You can see the attack on the children. The devil's the great deceiver. He is the great liar. He's the great manipulator. So I think, and if I follow you right, and I agree with this, that you can't talk about saving society and helping people in this darkness that we're going into without having the assistance of God.
That's exactly it. And that's what that's, you know, it's taken me a long time to realize this, right? I wish I had wise people around me who, like us now, could explain this, right? But we had to learn the hard way, right? By mistake. Well, we don't have time anymore, right? It's like literally 1 minute to midnight. And you know what I've realized? It is literally a war. It's a spiritual war that we've entered into. It is ferocious. We have to win it. And, you know, if you think about this idea of good versus evil, God versus Satan, you know, heaven versus hell, chaos versus order, this all boils down to whether or not you believe in children or you do not believe in children, whether you believe in protecting. That's why this Sound of Freedom movement, by the way, is so important, and it is related to everything that we've just discussed: the rise and fall of civilizations, Rome, the modern West, the descent into a dark age. It is all interlinked and interrelated, right? Because you're going to find that the people who are attacking this kind of movie, they hate civilization.
Right? Absolutely, 100%, and it's demonically driven. We can't be afraid,
right,
to say what it really is to be a Christian and a follower of God. It means that there is a heaven, there is a hell, there is good, and there is evil. In evil, just because we ignore evil, just because we want to say turn the other cheek, doesn't mean evil is going to be nice. Evil is going to take advantage of that, and they've taken it. When it comes to our children, they got our children because they distracted the parents. They indoctrinated the parents. You have to indoctrinate a parent first who would say it's okay to chemically castrate my 9-year-old. That parent has to be already indoctrinated with the lie, the destruction of mankind, because that's what it is. And but I want to go circle back. We got a few minutes left here, and I hope you come back on the show, because this is the message is. It's too big to not do it, and I want to share it with your permission. When you do your writings, I want to just add it to our read page so people can see it here in the States, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Let's get the message out.
To get that message out. So let's circle back really quick about the churches burning in France. Let the average person who doesn't know, they just think, oh, that's horrible, a church burned to the ground. Why are the churches burning to the ground? Why is that happening? Let the folks know from your perspective.
Right. So, you know, I've been tracking this phenomenon for a while. You know, I'm here in the UK, and what happens in France and on the continent, you know, we have a stake. We have an interest in what goes on in Europe. And I think nowhere, you know, there is no better place right now. Obviously, you guys are holding the line, and I believe in Americans to hold the line. I heard your opening gambit with the Constitution. You have checks and balances. And ultimately, I think that you will do what's necessary to defend the Constitution and to defend the biblical Constitution, right? And to defend America. I think you'll get there, right? Britain, man, we're like, you know, it's like a halfway house for us, okay? So if you guys are strong, we're strong. If you guys are weak, we tend to reflect that, right? That's why we've got to get this guy out of the White House. But Europe, man, Western Europe is on the road to disaster right now. Okay, they are really, really weak. They're really vulnerable. You know, I talk a lot about what I call biblical safe zones, right? So I'm looking at biblical safe zones, let's say in America, probably Florida, probably Texas. Even in Latin America, you've got El Salvador, right? Where they're really unashamedly Bible believers. Hungary, right? Viktor Orban, a biblical safe zone. But if you look at countries like France, I call it flaming France, deindustrializing Deutschland. You know, France particularly is heading for disaster. The worst case, it's a civil war. That's the logical entropic conclusion of this regression and decay. And you know, remember they had the revolution. I mean, the revolution in my eyes was not a good thing. It was a bad thing because it was a secular revolution. And the minute you jettison your faith, you are on the road down. You are on the spiral downwards because you don't have any faith. And if you don't have any faith and beliefs, others can fill that void, fill that gap. And so France is on, it's like France is heading for some really, really dark times. So how does that manifest? What are the symbols that we can kind of point to? Yes, we saw these riots, right, where France, with Paris, parts of Paris, and it wasn't just Paris, right, that was burning. It was the rural, it was quiet, idyllic, French settings that where migrants were, and they were doing this on purpose, right? So they literally said this is revenge for colonialism, right? So they have no intentions of integrating and becoming French citizens.
That's right.
Or being, even bringing their own cultures and being peaceful. It's fine. You want to bring your own, look at America, many different.
I was just going to say that.
So it's not that, listen, you guys come to us and you have to be like us. It's not like that at all. But when the moment you guys start to get violent and aggressive and you try to tear everything down, hey, come on. But the problem is in France, you've got the leaders, the political leaders. You've got Emmanuel Macron. This guy's a Davos guy, right? These liberals will never admit that they've made a terrible, terrible strategic mistake. So that manifests in, we see that the burning of churches, which is happening every week. And if there's something that crushes me really, really deeply, it's it's seeing these churches being systematically targeted and set on fire one by one, right? And so you got to ask yourself, well, what are these burning churches going to be replaced with?
Exactly. That's exactly who's doing, in your opinion, who's burning them down and why? What do they want to put there instead? They just want barren ground, or do they want to build something else?
Well, let me. It's a great question. Let me paint a picture for you. Okay. There's a chapter in Jim Penman's book near to the end, and he talks about the political, he paints out, like Spengler does, right, the political decline of the West. And he paints a picture for Europe, West, the continental Europe, Western Europe. And there's a part that really hits me. He says, listen, if things carry on, Western Europe is going to look like the Ottoman Empire on a really bad day. Oh. In other words, grindingly poor masses ruled by a privileged elite, the Ottoman Empire. Yeah. Now, if you know anything about civilizational cyclical history, and you look at the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, right? And what came after that? You had the whole kind of Islamic era, the whole Islamic world, but it was the Ottoman Empire that came from that. Right. So this time it's the cultures that are the most resilient and resistant and confident and aggressive will win. Right.
Yeah, I believe, and this is just my opinion, I believe that we're in a holy war and it's never ended. We're living scripture today. The enemies are still the enemies. The good and the bad are still the same good and the bad. The message of Jesus Christ when he walked the face of the earth is still as valuable today as it was then. The message of the Old Testament and the warnings there is just as valid today as it was then. And we're living scripture. We're always going to until Revelations, right? So because of that, I did a writing on my website, and folks, you can always go to craigbouchon.com. You're going to be able to see this entire interview and what we did today. It's fantastic. But I put together the indispensable role of God in our world, because we have to stop denying the fact that without that Christian stable bedrock, what our founders said, only a Christian based nation could ever be a republic. Because you have to have a structure in place and this higher power that holds you accountable, because mankind is not the one to hold you accountable. We have to be held accountable by a higher power.
Amen. And that's where, and actually, if you're a sociological seismologist, right? If you're into sociology or sociological science, civilizational cyclical history, you understand that capitalism, democracy came from Christianity. That's where it came from, right? Yeah. So if you, yes, in our Faustian pact to make money and profit and globalization, and which is kind of a very Western thing, we jettisoned our faith, right, in the pursuit of profit and money. And I get all that, but in doing so, it was Peter Thiel that said it best. We've left ourselves dangerously vulnerable. Even the Chinese understand our vulnerabilities and they understand our strengths. So what do I mean by that? Well, you know, Britain's chief rabbi, a guy called Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, he's passed away now. He references Niall Ferguson, the historian over in the US, and in his book Civilization, right? And it really hits out at me. And he says that the CCP, the Chinese authorities, the Chinese government tasked their social sciences teams with figuring out why it was that Europe overtook China in the 16th century. Right. So go back, you know, you had the fall of Rome, you had the Dark Ages. Europe was a basket case for hundreds of years. The Bible started to seep in and work its magic, right? People started to live by the rules, the commandments, Old Testament, New Testament, you know, Moses, Jesus. Things started to recover. Yeah. Temperamental scaffolding started to be rebuilt again, right? Things started to move, the social fabric of life. It was all centered on Christendom. Very powerful. You know, that's why I try and explain that Christianity, it's not an ancient relic from the distant past. It's the forge with which civilization is defended and created and advanced. And the minute we start to reject that, we are heading for oblivion. So the Chinese figured out, you know, we thought it was your weapons. We thought it was your political system. We thought it was your guns. You had better guns than we did. They said, but, you know, for the last 20, 30 years, and this was like 10 years ago. So they figured it out long ago. They said, we've realized it was your social fabric of and foundation of Europe. It was Christianity. That's why wow, they understand our strengths and our weaknesses, and we can't figure it out, right?
They've weaponized they've weaponized it against us.
Amen.
And they've got that because there's just some key writings. You know, you can take Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, which brought us abortion and the indoctrination of the Black church and many horrible things. You have that. You have the Communist Manifesto, okay, and then you have Sun Tzu's Art of War. And it's like they've taken these type of structured weapons, because that's what they are, to destroy societies and to dominate societies, specifically Sun Tzu's Art of War. And they've put them all in this big roux in the war that we're in today. And I know, Eric, we're going over a few minutes, but that's a nice thing about having our own network, by the way. If we go over a few minutes, we can.
Yeah, but, no one's behind us, so you guys are just keep on going. It's going well.
We definitely have to have you back on, Daniel. There's no doubt about that. But so here we are today. What's the Great Reset? We see the 2030 agenda. We see the WEF. We see the WHO. We see that Biden, to your point, saying, hey, yeah, the New World Order can be, how about the WHO has the power of the all-seeing eye? And when the next tragedy happens, going back to Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, you don't let any tragedy go to waste. They're already putting in place this bigger structure that, quite frankly, folks, completely tramples on your constitutional rights.
Right.
You know, and that's where they're going to, is that they don't care if a society no longer, like I said earlier in the show, the U.S. Constitution has 3 big words on it: we the people. Right. And there's a reason it's so big. And Benjamin Franklin said, we have given you a republic if you can keep it. Those 2 things are connected, because the warning is there's been no society in the history of the world structured specifically like the United States of America that is here to be a bastion, not just for itself, but for freedom and liberty and God-fearing people, and those even not God-fearing, to protect them from tyranny and from the total destruction of their society. And to your point, here we are today. The United States of America is deeply under attack, and but that is why we do this show. That's why we team up with people. This is why we have people like yourself on. We're going to get the information out, because when the people, I believe that when people get the truth and they get the facts, the average person will make the right decision. I do. I believe that.
Amen. Amen. You know, I'll leave you with something that I've identified, I've seen, and it's with one of your guys, Elon Musk. Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't know what people think about this guy, but this guy, I mean, history will judge him to be one of the most capable entrepreneurs I think that consciousness has ever produced, right? And he's building incredible companies, irrespective of whether you're pro electric cars or against it. But look at what he's done with SpaceX. I mean, it's just incredible, right? It's inspiring.
And with Twitter, free speech.
Right. But what he's done with Twitter is even more interesting because he sees the threat to civilization. And if you listen to him, he talks about this idea that if we carry on, we're heading for a dark age, right? He talks about collapsing birth rates. He talks about wokeism being the greatest threat to civilization. He was willing to spend $40-something billion to take an overpriced Twitter away from these kind of satanic forces.
Yeah,
this to me is inspired. Like this guy is a Knights Templar. He's a warrior. He's a biblical warrior. He calls himself an agnostic, which is interesting. He's on a journey. I see this journey.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd have spoken to this guy maybe a few decades ago, he'd have told you he was an atheist, right? He'd have said, listen, I'm all in on science, okay? I don't believe in God. I'm all in on science. He doesn't say that today. He calls himself an agnostic.
Yeah.
Recently, I'm seeing him tweet things like, God bless America. For me, that's it.
That's right.
It. And you know what? Let's leave it there. God bless America.
That's right. Hallelujah. Thank you for coming on the show today. Truly. It's wonderful to meet you in person. Please, we are going to invite you back. We hope that you come on. I think we're going to share. He does a lot of writings. We're going to share it. We're going to put it right on our site so you can see what he does. We watch it. We listen, and I'll hook back up with you. And thank you so much, Daniel Hood, for coming on today. God bless.
Amen. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, folks, I hear the music. What a show. I told you, folks. I promised you that we are just not going to sit here and just be mad and do nothing. No, we're going to bring the people to you that you don't normally get to hear from and also see so you can get the facts. Because together, folks, we will win. Divided, we have no chance. And that is a fact. So stay tuned tomorrow. We got a big show coming. Eric, thank you so much, my friend.
Great show.
There's a lot of things. Letters to Trump. We have not done letters to Trump, and this would be 2 shows now. And I don't like that.
We have time. We have time to do it. I do want to. I think Dan is very motivational. I think his pursuit of knowledge is contagious. So definitely looking forward to have him back on. But we got time to do a letter. We have time to do a letter to Trump.
That's the fun part of the show. I like to point out, folks, that these people today that say they hate Trump, they loved Trump not too long ago, but now they hate Trump. And so this is interesting today. And again, this is letters to Trump right here. And Ronald Reagan, love Ronald Reagan. Wasn't a perfect man, but I think his heart was in the right place. And I think he was a very good president. So what do we got here? I'm trying to put this so you can actually hear me when I'm reading it to you. Dear Mr. Trump, this is April 19th, 1985. Dear Mr. Trump, 3 years ago, I announced the formation of the President's International Youth Exchange Initiative, a joint effort of the private and public sectors to promote mutual understanding among our young people and the young people of our closest allies. The United Kingdom, the Federal Republic of Germany, Japan, France, Canada, and Italy. The original trial effort has since been expanded and now includes 30 countries worldwide. The President's Council has been instrumental in promoting the initiative. I would like to extend my personal thanks to you for your generosity in supporting this worthwhile program. The $4 million, folks, $4 million pledged by members of the President's Council have permitted over 12,000 young people to benefit from an international experience. Giving these young people the opportunity to visit a foreign country and live with the host family is one of the most effective ways to build bridges of understanding among future generations. Thank you for all you have done for the initiative over the past 3 years. Sincerely, Ronald Reagan. Folks, here it is right here. Okay. So you can see. That's it right there. If you don't have the book, you don't have to. We're going to read it to you. Exciting stuff, folks. What a great show today. And we're going to read some more of this book as we move. Bob Hope's coming up. Bob Hope's in the book as well. Thank you, Eric. Great show today. Folks, go to craigbouchon.com. Again, we're going to have Dan Hoods. As he's doing his writings, we're just going to make it an author right on our read page. So you're going to be able to watch and listen, read what he's doing because it's important to get the information. Okay, folks, we'll see you tomorrow. God bless.